Hey, this is Tony Sweet. We have Captain Ron here live at Contact in the Desert. For truth be told, we have the one and only Zuni Elder, Clifford Mahooty, with us, and we are honored because this guy has been behind the scenes of the cesspool, the swamp of Washington, D.C., and we're so glad to have you here at Contact in the Desert. First of all, what was your topics that you've been talking about in your workshops?
In this meeting, I've been talking about the Star People connection with the Zuni Indian people and other tribes, and also what the future holds as far as the Space People connection is concerned. And so that's basically what I'm here to convey to the people of what our history and our prophecies have been all about up to this point. So I've been informing the public here about what to expect in the next 10 years.
So tell us that I know the Zuni people have been such an important part of our nation, and as white people, we're ashamed of how the U.S. government has treated the Native Americans. Can you tell us, has there been any change at all with the way the treatment of Native Americans today?
There is not any significant change. It's still the modus operandi. It's still primarily the land issues that are still involved, and also still the things that are happening in the education and the cultural system. It's still a continuance of trying to get rid of our natural resources and also our social activities related to our spirituality and our culture.
We saw this right recently with the pipeline, right, Tony?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, right.
Well, one of the things that happened with the pipeline is that the United States government dropped the ball in representing the American Indian community, because the Bureau of Indian Affairs has the responsibility under the trust responsibility relationship to protect all the lands that Indians are at, especially in the Natural Resources Department. And the thing that they dropped the ball on is the environmental assessment, and later on the environmental impact statement. And it was a joint mistake by both, not only the federal government, but also with the tribal leadership.
You know, one thing that always interested me is because the Native Americans were so close to the Star People, at least through connections and even just visually meeting and sometimes seeing the Star People. I find, do you think that might be one of the reasons that the government is suppressing the Native Americans, because of the knowledge of Star People?
Well, it's not only the Star People connection, but in times past, within the last 300 or 400 years, they have taken away all the spiritual sites, especially places like the Grand Canyon, like the Yellowstone National Park and other sacred areas, and they have also taken away the lands that the Indians used to do their spiritual activities in direct relationship with the Star People connection and other god systems. And so if you look at the map right now, you can see a lot of places where they have military bases. You have places that they put in wilderness, national parks, national monuments, and of course places like the Chaco culture, Mesa Verde, Canyon de Chelly, and places throughout the whole United States. They have put them under the government ownership of those lands.
So actually, maybe I'm getting this wrong, but what I'm hearing you that because of the national park system, which to us sounds like they're trying to preserve the land, it's actually just to take control of that land. Is that correct?
They're not protecting the land. They're only protecting what is involved inside the national parks. For example, about 4 or 5 years ago, we encountered a uranium mining operation in the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and we found out that was by executive order by Obama, and if somebody really followed the trail of that, it will probably end up in that uranium deal that happened with the Middle East. And that's when Obama and Hillary and others were involved with it. And they were, when we went back there and we researched that project, they gave us a lot of flack that we could not even find. And also, we also consulted with the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian is the arm of the federal government to take away all those lands that were very, very sacred to the American Indians under the disguise of preserving the archaeology, artifacts, and some of the land resources.
Well, I mean, you've seen both sides since you was part of the back end of the government for so many years. You got to see both sides of Democrat, independents, and Republicans. As in every administration, everyone promises certain things. I feel that there's no difference. Do you see a difference even with the current administration?
I don't see any difference at all because I have been involved with it since I was a kid. I even know the days when Eisenhower first started out as a president, and throughout the years as Kennedy and so on. And right now, absolutely nothing has changed. It's still the whole process that they are doing, which is a big lie. And there's a lot of information that is being put out right now with the technology that we have. It has been increased at least 100-fold since the day back in the days when I was a kid. And right now, there are so many projects going on, and the American people has been duped. And also they have bought out the Indian leadership, so-called leadership of the American Indian. So they are both in cahoots. The Indian select few, about maybe 5% are the so-called tribal leadership, and they have made most of the tribal governments, or rather the tribal people, under secular rule. So we as wisdom keepers, medicine men, spiritual elders, and so on, we don't have any rights to any of our land.
Well, I know we had talked earlier about with a lot of the chiefs and the leaders of a lot of the Indian nations, we feel like, I guess, hope that most of the governments and even the leaders and elders of a lot of the nations that would want to help their fellow man and women, but it sounds like that's not true, because greed and corruption doesn't matter if it's Native Americans. Sometimes, not all. Is this kind of like Washington? Is that true?
It's
Corruption everywhere. Yeah.
It is corruption everywhere. I always make a reference to that about the microcosm of the tribal system is the macrocosm of the federal government. The activities, like the big dog taught the little dog, and they're on the same path, on the same agenda, and on the same note. So there is absolutely no difference. The only thing is that they have, the tribal governments have been bought out, and they have installed, like any third world nation, the federal government had a hand in establishing those leadership of the Indian reservations. You go back to any Indian reservation and you ask the real people that are the true people of any reservation, is that what is going on with your tribal government or your government body? And they say, we don't know anything about it because they work behind closed doors, just like Washington, D.C. And it's just like the people in Washington, D.C., they talk with a forked tongue.
Yeah. Well, do you think and we're going to go back a little bit to the Star People, the UFO connection. Okay. Do you feel that the Star People were helping the Native American, the nations that lived in this country? Do you feel like they were helping at one time, and how did that get disconnected? Because it seems like that's very spiritual. Do you feel like they're still there, or do you feel like they've moved on?
The space people connection has always been there. It'll always be there. The only thing that the humans have done is that they have deviated from the doctrines and the philosophies and the protocols that were given to the American Indian and the indigenous groups, because of the influence of primarily two groups. First of all, when when this nation was taken over by the white man back in the 1700s. That was the first wave of it, where they took the American Indians, and we fought, or at least my ancestors fought for them for a long time. And then the first arrival of a different set of people was actually started in my reservation, with my present reservation, by the invasion of the Spanish way back in 1540. Wow. And then after that, it spread all over. And then as time went on, they start trying to kill off all the Indians. They started out with a food source. Mm-hmm. They killed all the buffalo. And then the second thing is they brought in diseases. You heard that story about providing the Indians blankets with smallpox. Yep. And then also they started taking upon themselves to kill all any resources that were the food source of the American Indians. And it's a pollution actually started in those days. As time went on, they incorporated the Catholic Church. For example, the Jesuits and the Franciscans were the meanest people that ever went on the Indian reservations, and they were supported by the military and the federal government. But people do not want to know the true facts of the history of why they started collapsing. And then also starvation started, and they start tilling the overgrazing, doing the land, and that's why, for example, it created the Dust Bowl. Introduction of different species from all parts of the world wiped out the water, and introduction of different types of people with diseases. The Indians were disease-free, and they start bringing in diseases from all over the world, and that's what was part of it. For many years, the federal government had a lot to do with introduction of many different types of diseases, so that will affect the American Indian community, and they will call it that death by diseases, when they actually were the one that put in the diseases, and they created the diseases to get rid of the American Indian. And this is just a slight review of what has happened.
Yeah, that's just a cliff note. That's a cliff note. And before we let you go, being a Zuni elder and being outspoken must not be well received, or is it received well by the actual the people of the nations, not necessarily the government of the nations?
I have been ostracized by my own tribe because I have been working I thought that I was trying to improve them. This is not an overnight thing. I started out when I was a very young boy, because I saw what the Bureau of Indian Affairs did to not only myself, but my mother and my grandmother's generation. And so I thought that by becoming educated and learning the system and becoming fierce than what they were, that I thought that I would be well received back in my community. And so that's why I went into the hard sciences and the engineering, the health programs, even in the service to my country. And when I came back, they did not want me because I don't know exactly what the reason is, but I was ostracized. So actually I do not live on my reservation, even though I belong to an Indian tribe. So, and there's a lot of my counterparts throughout there that we have gone out there and educated, but they don't want us back. So they're used to being the wards of the government because it's easy, and that's where I'm at in this game.
Clifford, before we let you go, too, you and I were talking out there a little bit earlier. It's a big fan of casinos. I thought you might want to get a chance here to set the record straight, because I think people think that because these Indian casinos have been legalized, that the Indians are making tons of money on that. Why don't you set the record straight for us?
The casino activity is a farce, and because there's groups that benefit from that. First of all, a casino on an Indian reservation is like a mortgage. They go into a 20-year lease, 30-year lease, no more than 30 years. So once they get all the money, they can pull up their tent, and or rather, they can just leave and leave the casinos behind. And I always have a joke about that. And 20 years from now, when a grandfather is driving down the highway and the grandson would say, "Hey, grandfather, what's that thing that's on the side of the highway that's all locked up and it's weeds growing around it?" He said, "Grandson, that used to be our casino at one time." The money that is generated by the casinos, most of it goes to the investors, which are the casino owners. And then the state government has their cut, usually around 15 to 18%. The tribal governments is even lower than that. So that's when they get the money from that tribal government, only those that are in power use the money to feather their own beds, and those are the ones that drive the Cadillacs. And when you look for an accounting system of where the money goes to, there no such thing exists on Indian reservations. And it's still, I've always said that we haven't conquered alcoholism. The Indians haven't conquered domestic violence, drugs. And now we have introduced casinos, and this is where you can actually go walk in there and lose your money while you're still sober. So this is...
It doesn't surprise me that this whole thing is screwing with them. It's terrible. Not surprised.
No, but this is no Indian makes any money off of casinos, and so this is why when you look at that, you hear these other people, non-Indians, say, "Boy, they're really ripping off the white people, and they're making all kinds of money." And you go over there, and they're still poor.
Right.
And so
that's the truth be told part of this right there, because the truth is that's not what's happening.
And I don't see a lot of Native Americans even work there.
No. When I used to work with it, I was the first guy in there, and I had to review those things. And one of the sell game was that we are going to hire Indians because that's part of policy and also the law. Mm-hmm. But when you walk into a casino, the only Indian people that you see, if they're hired by them, are the ones that make change, and the janitors, and people that are over there cleaning the bathrooms. That's their way of saying that, oh yeah, we got our quota of hiring Indians. And all the casinos are managed by outside people, and they're usually managed by those people that are trained in the big casinos like in Vegas, Atlanta's, Reno, and other places. So no Indian is making any money off of it except the ones the 5% that are in power. And there's no accounting system. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs is part of that corrupt game.
Well, listen, this is what Truth Be Told is about, is get the truth out to you guys, and this is why we have people like Clifford on, because this is the man that has lived it, seen it, and he's been a part of it. And listen, you're a part of our tribe anytime. You Truth Be Told tribe, and we appreciate you for what you do and what you stand for. So thank you for being on the show. But where can people find you, follow you, and find out more information about you?
Well, they can look for me on different websites, and all they have to is put my name in, and then they can find me, because I have a lot of links with many different. For example, this meeting right now here, this conference, the Contact in the Desert, there's a lot of links to the stuff that I have done. I started out with Ancient Aliens, so you can find a lot of that links over there, all in their website also. But I travel quite a bit, and my message are the same. It's all facts, but I also have a way that if I'm wrong, I would like for them to prove me wrong, and I will apologize to them, but they have to prove to me that I am wrong, and I will also send them a letter of apology, notarized, to say that I was wrong. So that's my caveat.
Has that happened yet?
Not yet.
That's great. Well, this is Tony Sweet with Captain Ron and Clifford Mahooty, and we're so glad you guys joined us. We're out here on Truth Be Told.